In this video series, we're going to cover header design, header components, header fabrication, and header welding. Be sure to see all of the parts in this complete video series. Okay, now we have the first tube cut and fit. We're going to mark the four corners where the tube marries up to the corners of the flange. We'll take those marks, and those will be our reference points for the forming process. Okay, so we have the tube formed up and ready to go into the flange. As you can see, the tube is cleaned up and polished. You can polish them with a Scotch-Brite. We use an industrial polisher. You want to get all the bending fluids out of the inside. You want to start with a clean tube. So let's put the tube into the flange. Fits in the flange nicely. We have a little gap that you can't see, but there's a little gap here. We're going to have to sand some off the face of the tube. We'll run under the assumption that the tube is piercing all the way through and hitting the back plate. Let's take a look. Sure enough, we have 3/8 of an inch. We can take some off and fit it up. Okay, so we've taken about 3/16 off from the tube. We put it in. Nice fit, goes right up to the clamp. Let's go on to the next tube. Okay, now that we have this tube in, we're going to start with this tube next. It's the one that comes out of the slip joint of this collector. It comes out and it hits this clamp. As you may recall, we marked all these clamps on the mock-up. So we're going to pull a dimension from the edge of this clamp to the slip joint of the collector, and that'll give us a reference for cutting the bend. Always cut the bend a little long. Okay, next tube is ready to go into place. We'll slide it into the collector. Put it on in, rotate it into the clamp. A nice line up. This bend started off as 180. We cut it at 60 degrees. We pulled our dimensions from the mock-up, and she sets right in there. So let's go on to the next tube. Okay, so we have the next two tubes fit in there nicely. We haven't tacked anything yet because we don't want to be cutting any tacks. As you can see, they fit in there nicely. They're sanded perfectly. Okay, let's get our first tack into place. You're going to want a small tack. The smaller the better. We're going to go over tacking coming up. With a nice fit up, you can tack without any filler rod. Look at that nice small tack. When I tack, I like to have the welder on high pulse. That pulsing weld puddle draws the two tubes together. There we go. Well, we're ready to start on that number 3. You may recall we had a tight spot by that steering box. This tube gave us a reference for that tight spot. And we're going to use a real tight radius, 2-inch diameter bend to go in there. We'll slide it on into the clamp, line it up where it has to be with the port. We have our clearance. We basically know our depth by looking down the face of that back plate. We're going to mark it. We'll have our cut line, and away we go. The next bend is cut and formed and ready to go. It was done in that die set that we used on the vise, as you saw earlier. A little bit of it was dollied because when you get into a bend, they get work hardened in here and it gets a little harder to form. About 80% of all the bends that we carry are domestic. Domestically made bends are easier to form than imports because they're in annealed stainless. So let's put it into place. Goes into the clamp, drops into the flange. You can't see it from your camera view. We have ample clearance between our tight spot and the tube. Great fit. As you can see, we have the next tube put into the collector, ready to go. The next tube fits up to the bend coming out of number 3, and a smaller piece fitting in like this. Nice fit up and ready to be tacked. Okay, let's get our first tack in there. Okay, next 2 tacks. There's that one. Come up here and get this one. And we're good. Okay, so we have the number 1 tube fitted and tacked into location. You're going to want to put at least 3 tacks at every weld joint to keep the tube in place until we get to welding. You're also going to want to tack the flanges and 4 locations and not in the corners because we're going to dolly these corners out. Let's move on to the next tube. As you can see, we're on a number 5 cylinder, the last tube. By evaluating the pictures of the mock-up on the car, we saw where we can make some changes to make it a better header. By changing the tube slightly, we can eliminate some bends. Let's take a look at the mock-up and some pictures of it. If you look at the number 5 tube, the third one back, there were some bends put into place during the mock-up process that later on we felt didn't really need to be there. You will see in the next segment how we eliminated those bends and straightened up the route of that tube. As you can see from the pictures of that mock-up, our changes should make a better header. We fabbed up a few pieces here. They go in like this now. Much more streamlined and less bends and less welds. So let's tack it up and see how it works out. Okay, let's get these tacked up. There we go. As you can see, the header is all tacked up and ready for a final fit. Our tight spots miss just perfectly, even with the modification that we made to this tube. Now is the time to check it on the car. Any changes at this point are easy to make. Once it's welded, completely different story. So let's give it a shot and see how she fits. Notice the clearance we have on that number 1 tube. The welding fixture reference tube worked great to identify that spot, and look at the clearance we achieved on the number 3 cylinder by using that tight radius bend. The clearance on number 5 cylinder was also accurately represented by the welding fixture clearance tube. As you can see, the header fit perfectly into the car, even with our modification. We're ready to start the welding part of this video series. So let's move on into welding. Make sure you see us at stainlessheaders.com for all of your header component needs. We carry a complete line of header flanges, mandrel bends, merge collectors, and stainless header tubing.